My name is Daniel. I'm going to talk about different things today. I'm going to show some work that I find inspiring, and I'm going to show a bit of my own work. Like I said, I'm an interaction designer, so I explore how technology, human needs, and behaviors kind of come together. And that can be products, that can be services, that can be experiences, that can be anything that has some sort of interactive component to it. And for me personally, these projects usually have a digital, a physical, or even a biological component. I'm very curious sort of where these areas overlap. So I don't see myself as an interaction designer who does apps. I'm quite interested in sort of where these territories of different disciplines come together. And projects that I'm going to show here are partly real and partly speculative. And I find this tension between those two quite interesting, and where sort of the reality can learn from the speculation and where the speculation learns from reality. I'm not going to talk about VR. This is when you Google someone looking ridiculous wearing a VR goggle. I also need to confess I have quite little knowledge in fashion, so please excuse. But I'm sort of very interested in the fabric of fashion, which is sort of material, which is the human body, which is behavior. And sort of to come to Alexa's brief, bodies without substance, to me the body is more than the flesh, right? The body is the combination of the mind and the body. And substance is material in the broadest sense. And I'm sort of quite interested in these what I would call hybrid materials. So it's quite unclear what it precisely is. It sits in this borderline state, and a lot of the developments that I see, and a lot of projects that I've been seeing out there is sort of there is these overlaps happening, and there's sort of these atoms jumping in the world of pixels, and pixels jumping in the world of atoms, and they're kind of coming together, forming these hypermaterials, and that's something that I'm quite interested in exploring. So if we sort of take a small break and think how we see the world, how we experience the world, how it could be and how it should be, that's the space of speculative design. That's the space of imagination. That's the space where you can question everything that exists, where you can question every role, where you can think about how much gravity do we need if we could redefine it, right? How strong does it need to be? And if we sort of imagine this parallel universe somewhere out there that could be the same as ours, but it could be also very different. And to imagine these things, there are two things that are sort of guiding principles. One is a concept by a philosopher called Nick Bostrom, which is technology completion conjecture, which is basically saying, as a humanity, if we sort of put enough resources in the sense of time, in the sense of manpower, in the sense of money into something, we can develop it eventually, right? So that almost anything is possible. And that kind of leads towards a book by Michio Kaku, which I always forget, which is called The Physics of Impossible. And he sort of had interviewed several scientists, and they said the only thing that is in their mind and our current understanding impossible is perpetual motion, time travel, and precognition. So almost anything that is else is kind of in debate. And I mean, as humanity, we have these big dreams, and like Icarus here, who sort of wants to fly and sort of build these wings in order to become like a bird. He obviously failed. He fell into the water. But there's where I see the role of design, right? It's sort of exploring this borderline between utopia and dystopia, between what is possible and what is not possible. And as designers, and you know, we've seen that very well with the project that Agi showed, is we have the power to make things very tangible, to make things very visual, to make things very clear. And there's a lot of other disciplines lack that sense of expression, and that's something that design can do. So this is a project that I did with a friend of mine, Lucas, back at the RCA. And I guess in sort of this context, it is kind of exploring speculative variables, sort of what are our future needs in the sense of food and nourishment, and what is an accessory that is not only augmenting but modifying our body in extending its capabilities. We are investigating the concept of artificial photosynthesis and thinking that our body needs energy in the sense of calories to fuel and to sort of make us move and to supply us. What would be a sort of a solar-powered human, right? What if we had like a device that could translate what comes from the sun into energy and we wouldn't need to eat anymore? And so we designed this 3 different objects that sort of explore different characters and behaviors and style through their expression. But let's rewind one moment and start again from the briefing. So what is substance? What is matter? And how are these assumptions that we might have about substance that might help us for our discussion later on? How are they sort of related to the knowledge that we have around them? And yeah, scientists are obviously at the forefront of exploring those. And here at CERN, in this fantastical, megalomaniac setup where we sort of shoot things at each other that we can't even see. Like it's this massive structure somewhere underneath Switzerland that's bigger than a city, and we're sort of shooting things against each other that no one can see. But yet these things kind of form our understanding of the universe and the rules that sort of we as humans supposed to play in. And you kind of always when there's something new coming up, you have to sense there might be a discovery that kind of questions everything that we always wondered would exist and would be. And we never quite know if what we actually believe is fundamentally true, as there are still so many questions. And designers and artists and material scientists obviously explore this space as well. And this is a project called Biologic. You've probably seen that. And they use sort of living materials as part of matter. And that's a quite interesting approach, I think, to have the sense of a responsive skin, right? Your garment is sort of your second skin, right? It's an artificial second skin. And what if this layer was living as well? What if that could be a living actuator? They invented this material, which is a living material, and they translated it into a dress that a dancer could wear, and it would sort of pick up these cells that live in the material, pick up the moisture, the heat of someone moving. So after some time of moving, that material would open up little windows, little pores, and sort of let the skin breathe again. And as an interaction designer, I find this interesting that it's this concept of zero UI, right? There is no interface necessary. I don't have to do anything, right? I just have to move, and everything around me adjusts automatically to what I do. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do anything with it. That's a notion as an interaction designer that is quite interesting. And if we kind of take this further, so what if we had clothes that could be just one layer, the same for summer and winter, and they adjust to sort of heat and cold, and they could, have these aspects that could automatically adjust our environmental properties. And another project that is quite inspiring, you've probably seen that as well, is Project Jacquard by Google ATAP. They sort of dig really deep into this layer of where sort of fabric becomes interface, right? So they take a normal garment and then they sort of weave their special conductive garment into it, and that creates a surface that can become a touchscreen. And the interesting aspect is that they almost don't need to change the original material, right? It's still a garment. It's still the raw material. All they do is add a tiny other layer, and it can be sort of processed as any other material, as if it was any other material. But you essentially change the DNA of fabrics, right? It's kind of altering the DNA of that fabric to make it do things that it couldn't do before. So that's a quite interesting sense of modifying materials. And I mean, a lot of these applications right now are still crude, so I'm not so much interested in what they do today, but I'm quite interested in what they might be able to do tomorrow. What is as well different is that this material becomes an intelligent material, right? It becomes a cognitive material. It can become a thinking material. It can do input, it can do output, it can communicate. So what if this wearable technology could not only augment our body in a physical sense, but could augment our body in an intellectual sense, right? It kind of spreads artificial intelligence around our body. And that changes the dynamic and even the architecture of, there's my brain, it communicates with several bits that are kind of all the way around me, and they all can think, they can do tiny little things. And how do these sort of communicate with me and tell me what they do and what I need to know about them in order to react to the world? Becomes this kind of Superman-ish suit of thinking bits around me. I see a lot of developments out there that kind of challenges traditional notion of materials, and I call it hypermateriality for now. And so it's intelligent, it's controllable, it's malleable, it's a material becoming an interface. It's this notion of the physical being controllable as anything else that we control in a digital world. And what can design do with this new potential? That's something that I'm interested in. So this is a concept for a project that I worked on, and I was interested in what if that we couldn't only change the material, but the material stayed, right? What if, like clay, that is, it's soft, you can form it, but it can, after some time, it becomes hard. What if we could speed this up? What if we had a material that could be soft and hard at the same time? What if we had materials that could be light and heavy at the same time, rough or soft at the same time, structured or unstructured, white or black? We sort of explored this with two colleagues, Leaning and Jiffey, which we call sort of program mode stiffness changing material. So it's the concept of a layered material that we can, through pneumatic control, adjust in its stiffness, in its responsiveness. One application here is like a flexible display that could act as a material simulator, right? So on the very left-hand side, I see wood projected onto something. So the way how it behaves, it's kind of hard. I can knock on it. I can get a feel for that material. Or in the middle, it's like some foamish soft core. So the way how it behaves, I can still twist it. I can still tweak it. Or on the right side, it's like a leather material, right? I can flip it. I can totally twist it around, and it behaves like leather because the material knows which kind of state it has. And this is I think where this notion of this hybrid space between digital and physical is interesting, and where we sort of can simulate certain properties that one material could never have in its own regards. And I guess the other angle is sort of, reality. So what is reality? And does it happen in my eyes in the sense of what I see? Or does it happen in the sense of what you see? Or does it happen at the atom level? And so I'm showing a project by a company called Magic Leap, which is sort of the secret startup that works in the world of mixed reality. So they go far beyond what any HoloLens does. They sort of project information directly on the retina of your eye. So whatever you see is really happening right there, and it's no extra layer. And the world could look totally different for you than it could look for someone else. The other aspect that I'm looking through my work is sort of this intimacy of technology and this intimacy of interfaces as they're becoming closer and closer, be it phones in our pockets, be it smart watches, wristbands tracking us. And obviously that second layer, not only the physical of where something is placed, but what does it know about me? And this kind of cognitive offload that I do to this object in my pocket. Tying back to the beginning, a project that we sort of worked on together is currently on exhibition in the Design Museum, which looks at designing for our future selves. And we developed an AI that could be a social assistant. And our question was, how could that help us be more social, live longer and healthier? and build sort of healthy communities. So technically, it's a little package of nanobots that you would swallow, and they would sort of enable the in-bodily processes. But that is kind of connected to a larger artificial intelligence system that would sort of manage the information. One application here is a neuro-augmentation gateway. So it's something like a smart ear. Imagine you had all the intelligence sitting close to you, and all the person that might, where memory might be fading, you might need sort of extra bits to enrich a conversation. What if you had something sort of sitting there that could just whisper in your ear? It's not something that is sort of in your phone, it's far away from you, but something that really gets close to your brain and close to how you think. And I know these things today feel sort of a bit futuristic and weird, but the technology is slowly developing, and it's becoming quite possible. If we're becoming older, these things might be more desirable if we become more forgetful, and the pressure to know all these things becomes even stronger. And this is essentially an augmented gut feeling. It's exploring what if your instincts could objectively be right? If your senses could be enriched with real objective information, wherever that comes from. Think about this, right? You get a positive feeling because you're in touch with someone, but there's no real logic to it, right? It's how you feel. It's it's the signals that your body produce. But what if there was a larger intelligence that could plug onto these signals and infuse them with real information and sort of guide you through the world and get you in touch with the people that are good for you, that you profit of. So I'm leaving it here, trying to summarize. So as I see sort of materials, computation, the minds and bodies kind of merging and taking on new functions and taking on hybrid functions. And I think that's a space that is very interesting. And I think fashion sits in a very, very unique position, right? Where currently probably 90% of my body, even more, is kind of fashion. It's garment. I'm covered in some sort of wearable fashion, right? So I'm quite curious to see what fashion designers make out of this new possibilities of the mind, of the virtuality, and the new materials. Thank you.